Good Chodesh, everyone. It is Rosh Chodesh Shvat. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Right now, for this episode, we're going to zero in on Baltimore for the beginning. We're going to get to Chicago in just a couple of minutes, or maybe more. And I'm going to explain why we're first going to speak about Baltimore, because this is actually a very serious situation. Baltimore has gone already a couple of winters. From my understanding, they've gone a couple of winters without seeing any significant snow at all. What's called, I don't know if this is an official term, but they're calling it a snow drought. Now, in many locations, when you say the word snow drought, it really doesn't have so much significance. In fact, to most adults, not weather enthusiasts, but many adults, we know they hate the snow. The snow's an inconvenience. So they hear the word snow drought. What could be better than that? And in many locations, a snow drought means instead of the city receiving an average of 90 inches of snow a year, they only got 40 inches of snow a year. So you have stuff like that. 90 inches isn't so common, but 60 inches, instead of getting 60 inches, they only got 30 inches. But in Baltimore, in probably Philadelphia as well, and this is actually a lot more serious, and I'm going to explain to you why this is serious. The seriousness really has to do probably with children, and you have to realize that you have children growing up in a city which it's part of the city's climate to receive a winter. The city receives on average approximately 20 inches of snow a winter, which means it's a strange situation. That means that the years where they get nor'easters, let's say you get 40 inches, and then followed by a year without that, so you get 10 inches. And it's kind of up and down, but when all is said and done, you end up on average with 20 inches. So people grow up with snow. That's what the city is. Everybody knows that snow is an amazing experience for children. And when children grow up not knowing what snow is, but they hear their parents talk about snow and they anxiously await snow and it never comes, it actually is sad. And I would think even adults who hate snow, but they have children growing up in Baltimore, are probably saddened by the fact that there's not just there's no snow days, but there's not even enough snow to even show a child what snow is. It's really an unbelievable thing. When we say the words climate change, the words climate change, if you think about it, they actually don't really mean if the climate's changing. There's no place where you have an all four-season city which has become tropical. But this is very close. You have Baltimore. I'm not saying what the cause is for it, but you have a city where it used to get snow, and for the past couple of winters, there's been no snow. Okay, so we spent enough time on that, and because of that, we're going to focus in on something which, if you look at the European model as advertised in windy.com, you'll see something very convincing for next Tuesday. I want to explain why the National Weather Service seemingly does not look upon it as convincing, but at the same time, they are looking upon it as a possibility, and it finally has made it as at least a mention in both the National Weather Service and I noticed on the Weather Channel, which I rarely look at. I happen to have seen it today, and they did say they're watching a potential winter storm for Baltimore for this Tuesday into Wednesday. So the first thing is like this. The European computer model, which is known as the most accurate model, that's the one that's forecasting, if you look at it now, it's forecasting based upon a snow-to-water ratio of 10-1, and based upon there being no melting, which I don't think there would be. A solid Arctic air mass should be in place. We could double-check that. But they're forecasting a 6-inch snowstorm to hit Baltimore Tuesday into Wednesday. And yes, it's really got to be exciting, because 6 inches, for everyone, is 6 inches. It's enough to to show people what snow is, and children learn what snow is. They have fun, and it's not really overly. It's not that much. It's not a real blizzard. We know there's a lot of people, though, that do want a real blizzard. So you should know that the synoptic setup, does not make a real blizzard impossible. It's not impossible. You have a storm system right off the coast. It's intensifying, and those types of things could happen and have happened in the past. Okay, so now the question is, why is the National Weather Service not really mentioning it like the way they would if this would be happening in the Midwest? So they refer to something called something about a blocking pattern. They say the current computer models are forecasting a scenario which is based upon a certain blocking pattern up north, and therefore this whole thing is likely to change. So in other words, there are variables at play. The expert meteorologists who have been doing this for an enormous number of years, and especially the local ones, the ones who have been focused on the local area of Baltimore and Washington, D.C., they're most familiar with how these models operate. And they know when similar patterns have developed in the past, the forecast models changed. They know the model is making a forecast based upon what is put into the model, and they know that the information that's being put into the model is likely to change, and therefore this whole thing is likely to change. So therefore they're not making a big deal about it right now, but at the same time it's not being dismissed. It's not being dismissed at all. It's even made it into the hazardous weather outlook as a slight chance or a chance. I made a recording of me reading all of these things, and I would love to put an extract of these recordings on one of these episodes, and I believe the next one I'm going to do that. But for this one, the purpose of making it short, we're going to keep that out. Okay. Now, with that being said, we're going to jump over to the Chicago, and because there's lots to say, and we might come back to Baltimore. Okay, going here to the Chicago area. Well, we have a strong storm system, a really strong storm system, stronger than what we had before on Tuesday. At the same time, we have all of those variables that kind of I think it kind of messed up the storm for people living on the lake in Chicago, but it did not mess up the storm for many places. There are people in Chicago that might be listening to this wondering, what do you mean the storm wasn't messed up at all? I heard reports of people getting stuck in the snow for real. They were getting stuck in ditches. People in the Chicago, it was in the area. But yet where I was, there just wasn't snow. So there was a little bit in the beginning, it melted, then a little bit at the end, and then it melted. Okay, so now we have the storm system coming up. It develops, it's a 29.4 again, about 29.45, 29.46. It develops in southeast Colorado, and then it moves south. It really looks exactly like what a panhandle hook would look. It's something that goes into the Texas panhandle and continues moving south a little bit. And those things, that allows it to pick up an enormous amount of Gulf moisture. And then it starts to move up north. It moves into the Missouri-Arkansas border, right around in Illinois, really. Missouri-Illinois border, right around Cape Girardeau, as a 29.3 Friday morning. And then by late morning, it's a 29.2 around the border of central Illinois and central Indiana. And then it moves north. It really powers up. It's 29.1. You know, the definition of abomagenesis is when it drops 1 millibar for 24 hours straight. 1 millibar per hour for 24 hours straight. So I once figured out that 1,000 millibar low pressure system is about a 29.5 when you convert it into our American system. I don't have the calculator in front of me right now, but that's approximately what it is. And for every 0.3 you go down in the millibar, you go down 0.1 in our system. So 29.4 would be about 997. These are just rough estimates. 29.3 would be 994. 29.2 would be 991, and so on. So if you can get every 3 hours it drops by 0.1, that's called abomagenesis, and being that there's a special name given for it, that itself tells you that this is a remarkable storm system which will have actual ramifications in the forecast. They don't just call it abomagenesis for the purpose of making a fairy tale and for making newspaper headlines. See, people might do that if they were on the news, but even the forecasters, there is a term, abomagenesis. So this means it makes an actual difference in the forecast. It's not just the strength of the storm, but the rapid intensification also adds something to the storm, even if the storm doesn't end up being that intense. In this case, the storm will end up being that intense. In fact, reaching levels of at least a Category 1 hurricane. At least a Category 1 hurricane. Already, by the time it reaches the Chicago area, already is expected to be at a 28.9, and that's Friday afternoon. It's at a 28.9 already by Friday afternoon, and the thing is actually at a double pace of abomagenesis. It almost looks like it's dropping 2 MB per hour by Friday afternoon. So it's a rapidly intensifying storm system. A lot of times you hear those terms on the East Coast. You might hear them more by the North Pacific. We don't hear them as often in the Midwest, and I don't think the last one qualified and almost qualified. But this one, the Washington Post points out clearly, it will qualify for being abomagenesis. One thing about being abomagenesis is that it has to produce wind. And that's because it's intensifying so quickly, the pressure's dropping so quickly that if you're, no matter where you are, as long as you're not in the center of the storm, you're going to get lots of wind, very strong winds. With that being said, it's important to point this out, especially based upon what happened last time. The National Weather Service, in their marine forecast, they are pointing out that the winds might die down late Friday afternoon or early evening. The winds might die down a little bit in the Chicago area, probably because the center of the system will be coming pretty close, but the winds will pick up after that. And it sounds like it's really at that point when the winds pick up, it's after the front moves through. That's when it's a solid snow. That's when we have a fluffy snow with a snow to water ratio between 12 to 1 to 15 to 1. That type of snow blows around like crazy. And that's where we can get, at one point they're saying near blizzard conditions. At other points, they're saying it really might end up being blizzard conditions, and they're putting the chance of it between 20 to 30% chance for an actual blizzard, which is 3 consecutive hours of visibility, frequently 1/4 mile or less, due to 35 mile per hour wind gusts frequently happening. The wind gusts now 40, 45 miles per hour. That's what is forecast to happen that evening. This snow will accumulate solid snowfall accumulation during that time. The wind tends to reduce the snowfall accumulation slightly, but with that type of a fluffy snow and the amount of water equivalent that the snow has to work with, we are dealing with a heavy snow, a solid 6 inches from that point on. The question is, what about the first 6 inches? What's going to go on with that here in the Chicago area? So the National Weather Service points something out very interestingly. The best way to know exactly what it's referring to is to read it yourself, to go to the forecast discussion, or to wait until I have an extract of it on an episode here, which might come out soon. So the very beginning of the storm, they're expecting heavy, wet snowfall accumulations of about 1 inch an hour for the first 3 hours, 2 hours or so, before sunrise Friday morning. And then the thing dies down. We go into a light snow. It picks up again as a heavy snow Friday afternoon. But for areas near the lake, last time this happened, they said they were not sure whether the lake is going to enhance snowfall totals or whether the lake is going to eat into the snowfall totals. They just were not sure. So the question this time around, they're saying it's going to eat into the snowfall totals. And the thinking it probably is because last time that's what ended up happening. That's what's going to happen this time too. So some of the differences, however, last time we had an east wind during the entire lake event. During the entire time that the winds were off the lake, the winds were from the east. This time around, the winds will be from the east in the morning. They're shifting northeast in the afternoon. Northeast is the classic direction that winds are from in January when there is a blizzard, and northeast winds in January cause lake enhancement. The water temperatures are still a little bit too high, so we have that. We remain with that question, and probably based upon what happened a couple days ago, it ate into the snowfall totals. The thinking is that it will do the same over here. I think there's a better chance of that happening in the morning. That's just personally for two reasons. Once the precipitation's light, you no longer have dynamic cooling. So that's number one, and you still have the winds off the lake from the east without dynamic cooling, so the precipitation might even change over to rain. And
the National Weather Service has issued a winter storm warning.
Okay, that was not planned. I assume that's a winter storm warning for the Chicago area. I assume we'll look at it. I'm going to look at it when I'm done. All right, so that is... okay, where are we holding right now? All right, so that's thing number one. Number two, by the afternoon, however, the winds become northeast. The precipitation rates pick up. Part of the reason they pick up is because of lake enhancement from the precipitation. But when the precipitation is heavy, you have something called dynamic cooling. That's when the precipitation brings cold air aloft from up on high. It brings it down to the surface, helps keep the precipitation as snow. But the question is, maybe the snow will melt as it falls. So that's really a big question Friday afternoon. So we have a lull in the precipitation Friday morning. It starts off heavy. By sunrise, at some point, it becomes light, perhaps even a little bit after sunrise. This is what the National Weather Service is saying. If you want to know why, that's something that I could put an extract of it on, or you can look it up. Okay, then we go into the afternoon when it becomes heavy, and then we go into the evening when the winds become northwest, and it's still heavy and strong winds, and that's when the blizzard would happen, which the National Weather Service is calling life-threatening. Here's another thing the National Weather Service has done today. They're saying that this system has a strong resemblance to the December 15th, 1987 storm system. It has a strong resemblance to that of a heavy, wet, heart attack snow. That's what they're calling it. Okay, so it would be very interesting to go back into that storm system and see what happened then, and to then see what maybe could be expected to happen now. Following this storm system, we get solid Arctic air with some weak disturbances here and there. The Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening is the most significant disturbance, but that one looks to stay probably south of Chicago, will be affecting more southern areas. And then that's when we turn into, we would have to turn to the East Coast, to Baltimore again. There's not high confidence, despite the fact that the European computer model has been really consistent at forecasting 6 inches of snow for a number of days already for Baltimore. The top experts do not have confidence in that, but at the same time, again, it's not being dismissed. And the reason I think this is an important system is because it's just been such a long time since there's been any significant snow at all. And we're dealing with a city where that is part of the climate. When we say no significant snow, it basically means no snow that any child could go sledding or anything like that. So local people who live in Baltimore would know this, would have more clarity on this. But that's the story, and that's why we have a forecast in Baltimore. And I wish everyone a wonderful day. Take care.